Hey guys, welcome back to CheatSheetPros.com. NFL 2020 gets started this Sunday, and so I revamped the NFL cheat sheet and wanted to give you a quick tutorial. So for week one, we're going to pull 2019 stats, so be careful because there was a lot of changes and a lot of players opted out of the season. However, I wanted to fill it up with something as opposed to leaving it blank, so we're going to take a look at it. So to start this year, we're going to have three tabs down here. We're going to have this main tab, we're going to have the DVP tab, and the stack tab. Now, when you're looking at this, you see a lot of white. I've got a 32 or 34-inch widescreen monitor, so I try to leave a lot of white. So if you've got a standard computer, you can see it okay. So I've got a lot of upgrades I'm going to do to this sheet as it goes on, such as putting in actual projections for yardages, catches, possible 100-yard bonuses, etc. So starting off, it's going to be similar to last year. We're going to have our player. We're going to have the positions color-coded. We're going to have the algo. The algo is based, again, off last year's stats, so be careful. And then the fantasy points per game I'll add once we get a couple of games under our belt. And then we've got our team, the opponent. This is our DraftKings stuff. We got salary projection and value. Instead of color coding all of it, I just highlighted the big values in green, and then I did this, what is that, kind of like a goldish. If it's just under that, still a good value. And then the really low ones, I went blue just for cold. Same thing over here on FanDuel. Basically, the only difference between DraftKings and FanDuel is half point per reception, and DraftKings has full point PPR. And then I don't believe FanDuel's got the bonuses for 100 yards rushing, receiving, 300 passing. And then I think it's fumbles or interceptions as -2 over there versus -1 on DK. So the projections will be similar, but when you have pass catching backs, they're going to climb a lot on DK. And then here we got DVP, so I'm excited to get the first, second, and third week under our belt so we can get some good DVP numbers, because these are always key in finding good cash game and good GPP play. So the DVP is just the points the defense is allowing to the position. So for example, Michael Thomas is a wide receiver. Tampa Bay was giving up 46.1 points to the position. They ranked 32nd, so they ranked last. So that gives you an idea of what they're going up. But again, that's last year, so be careful if they added someone, they changed anything. I don't even really look at this a whole lot week one, because I know, for example, like Tom Brady left New England, went to Tampa Bay. They added a bunch of people on defense. A lot of players opted out. So as the season gets going and kicks off, this is really going to hone in on it. But anyways, we got the DVP as far as points and rank. And then the offensive team, so like the player we are looking at, this is what their team is doing. So this is how their offense ranks overall. This is their rushing offense, their passing offense, how many rush yards a game, pass yards a game, and total yards a game. So you can see, like, this has got to be Baltimore right here. Okay, yeah, so Baltimore ranked number one in rushing, passing, all the way across the board. And points per game or whatnot. And then over here, this is the opponent team stats that we're going up against. So the first two you see are just the generic pass defense, rush defense. So if it's a running back, you want to look at their rush defense. If it's a wide receiver, obviously you want to look at their pass defense, and this shows you their rank for the current season. And then over here, this was fun last year. So this is how the pass coverage team on the defense does versus the wide receiver 1, the wide receiver 2, the tight end, and you see running back. So this is a pass-catching running back. So any running back catching a ball out of the backfield is what it's looking at, not rushing. So this is receiving, the four main receivers that they're going to look at. And like you can see, like here, they give up a shit ton of points to everybody. And okay, that was Miami. That makes sense. And then one thing to watch for that I noticed last year is this wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. You'll see a team that's like top 5 versus guarding. Here's one. So who is this? So Chicago, they're top 5 against guarding the wide receiver 1, but they fall back to the middle of the pack against the wide receiver 2. So if you go into a showdown, a lot of people are going to have the money. They're going to go get that wide receiver 1. Then maybe you stack the QB with this wide receiver 2 who's got a better matchup, and then a tight end, and maybe spend your money elsewhere. here's a good example right here. So let me see what this is. So Washington last year was 9th versus the wide receiver 1, so they were pretty good with the top corner, but they fell to dead last versus the wide receiver 2 and second to last versus the tight end. So if this is a specific game I was looking at, I would want to stack the QB with the wide receiver 2 and the tight end because those are the best matchups. And then pass catching running backs, that kind of tells if you have someone like the Colts, Hines, I can't pronounce his first name, that's going to catch a lot of passes. If they get down in the game and you see one of these 27-32, that could be a good pass catching PPR back that's cheap on DK that you can plug in. And then over here for my sports bettors, this is the Vegas. So you can see the open, the current line, the movement, and what the total is. This is something else to look at. Like if you've got a running back so you want running backs on teams that are going to be up, running the ball, killing the clock, and then you want receivers on teams that are likely to lose the game, be down, and throwing a ton. So this Vegas line kind of helps read the tea leaves and tell you where to go. So let's run over here and look at this. Let me see if I can shrink this up a little bit, make it easier for you to see. Okay, here, so this is our DVP tab, and you can see, so this is every team in the NFL. And then this is how they do versus QBs, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, total points, and what they give up to the defense. And then I put the ranking in there next to them. Some people like ranks, some people like to see actual points, so I did a little bit of both. And then I totaled it up, so if you're looking for a game stack, you can just flip this up here to largest to smallest and say, okay, I'm going to stack one of these games that's against these teams that are allowing over 100 points per game, etc., etc. Again, this is from last year. And then also, like if you've got some money left over and you're looking for a tight end, you could come over here, sort by tight ends, who's given up the most points, and then find a tight end against one of these teams, maybe take a shot there for your GPPs. And then it will also help you avoid. So if you have, like, let's say, Buffalo's tight end, and you come over here and you say, okay, or not Buffalo's tight end, whoever's going against Buffalo, they're only giving up 9 points to the tight end. That's third best in the NFL. You probably don't want to play that guy unless you're really punting and just don't care. And then what's fun about this, when you come over here and you take these total points and say, okay, these are the teams that we're going to look at to go ahead and stack. So if you look at this one, so a team playing Carolina, so we really like the running back, wide receiver's decent, but we want to avoid the tight end. So if I'm stacking against Carolina here, I'm going to look at running back, wide receivers, not the tight end. And then you come over here and say, well, if I'm going to stack against Arizona, you know, the running backs are decent, wide receivers are decent, but the tight end's really good. They give up the most points. So maybe you go, and they give up a ton to QB. So maybe you go QB, tight end on this stack. This stack, you could do the QB wide receiver, QB wide receiver, QB wide receiver here. Here you could go QB running back, a pass-catching running back, and then maybe a tight end and hope they get down. So that's one way to read this, and we'll go over this more when the season comes in. And if you're looking for a defense, you can just kind of glance here and see who's giving up the most points to a defense. Those are going to be teams throwing a lot of interceptions, fumbles, not scoring very many points, etc. And then come over here. This is the moneymaker. So this is the stack tab. Let me see if I can get the whole thing on the screen. Okay, so if you've played with our MLB sheet, last year I had every single game, and you could scroll down forever and look at every game, and it drove me nuts. So this year what I did on MLB is you click into the home team, and you get a drop-down menu, and you choose your game. So that's what I did this year. So over here on the scoreboard, if you click into the bottom team, this is the home team, you see a menu pops up. Hopefully that's big enough you can see. And then you've got all of the home teams here. So when you pick the home team, it's going to auto-populate everything else. Now, let me pick a game that's on the main slate here. Okay, so I don't like that one. Let's do. Okay, we'll do Arizona and San Francisco. So here you're going to see this is all Vegas numbers here. This is the opening line, what the line is now, any changes, where the total's at, so you can see who's betting on what side, where it's moving. This is the public money for my sports bettors. If it's more than 80% on the spread or the side, it's going to highlight green, which you can see here. So that can't possibly be right. Arizona +8 to +7, 97% of the money on the over, 82% of the money. Anyways, okay, so sorry I get wrapped up in this sometimes. So we got all our Vegas stuff. This is kind of what Vegas is projecting the score. And the reason I put that in there is because I put my custom model over here with my yard per point line that I'll explain more here in a second. So that's more sports betting. So for fantasy, these three are the offense. So you can see the points per game, yards per game, and then rushing, passing yards. So I have the rank, the number, and then the home away split. So typically with NFL, it's hard because there's only 16 games in a season, but sometimes you can notice some teams do really bad on the road, really good at home, and then you can see this orange is basically where they're at. So the bottom team's always the home team, top team's always the road team, so you can compare these numbers real quick if you're looking to calculate something. Also over here, you can see if a team is doing well, are they doing it running the ball or are they doing it passing the ball? And that'll help you focus your DFS plays. Also, if you've got a team that's running the ball really well, like for example, San Francisco was second at 153.5 yards per game, and then say they're going up against a defense who, right here, okay, here's a good one. So last year, Arizona was allowing 120 rushing yards, the 23rd most in the NFL. So that's a good matchup there for a San Francisco running back to use for DFS. So the green up here is all offense, and it's pretty self-explanatory. The red down here is all defense. Defensive points allowed, season rank, home and road. Defensive yards allowed, season rank, home and road. Yards allowed, rushing and passing overall, and their rank. So you can kind of get a good idea. And then I added some new things here. So this is a DVP flow chart. So this just tells you Arizona's defense allows this many points to each position. So if you don't want to go back and look at the tab, like, okay, where's Arizona? They're here. Okay, there's QB, and then keep going back and forth and clicking around. It's a quick look right here. So I tried to set the parameters to highlight green or red if it's top 6, top 7, or bottom 6, bottom 7. It kind of fluctuates depending on what week one's going to do. But you can see, good and bad spots right off the bat when you're looking at the DVP. And then this is the quick stat breakdown. So you can look right here and see the total offense, the rushing offense, the passing offense, total defense, their rushing defense, their passing defense. And I got the rank for each team on each side. If it's top 5, bottom 5, it highlights in red or green. Red is the tougher matchup, and green is the softer matchup. So here you can see Arizona passing defense, they ranked 26th. San Francisco was second last year. So you probably want to be careful taking a lot of pass catchers against San Francisco. Again, this is from last year. I'm not talking about week one this year, so don't blow me up on Twitter. And then here we've got the ranks versus receivers. So back here on the main tab, I'm probably going to have to scroll. Over here you see how a team does versus each wide receiver, 1, 2, tight end, and etc. And we got it right here on the stack tab. So when you're looking at the lineups to see what you want to stack, you can see where the DVP is allowed, how the offense-defense match up. Over here you can see the specific yardages. And then here you can see how each team does versus the wide receiver 1, the 2, the 3, or the slot, the tight end, and the running back. And I kept this color-coded with what I color-coded over here when you're looking to stack. So, for example, Arizona is always going to be top team is always going to be on the left, and the home team on the bottom is always going to be on the right. So this is going to be San Francisco over here. So you can see San Francisco is number 1 versus pass-catching running backs, while Arizona ranks 29th. So, again, San Francisco running backs, probably a good thing to play. And then we come over here, and then these are our lineups. So I'm going to add to this as the season goes on. You can see here this fantasy points per game. We don't have any fantasy points because there hasn't been any games, so I just put soon on there, and I'm going to import that probably for week 2. But again, I've got the DraftKings salary, the projection, the FanDuel salary projection, and you can see it's going to auto grab the QB, the running backs, and it's going to put them in order of highest projected on down. Same thing with wide receiver. Hopkins is projected the highest, and then Kirk, and then Fitz, and then Andy Isabella didn't have a projection, so it's going to come down here. Now, bear with me, I'm still working on some of the name fixes, so I'm grabbing from DraftKings and 3 other sites, and everybody lists their name stupid. So Mark Ingram might be Mark Ingram, then he might be Mark Ingram the second, and some might be Mark Ingram space. And so I try to run through all the games and make the corrections, and then if I miss one, I go back, and each week I just slowly keep updating it. Now, what's fun about this is you can quickly look and say, okay, say you want Murray, Hopkins, you see your two prices, you know roughly what it's going to cost, and I'm going to add a little stack cost chart down here so you can see quick cost of stacks, because I like that in the MLB. And then down here, this is a fun little thing. So the total fantasy points projected in the game, I've got a number here. So this one says 75.7. Now, you might see a few blanks here. Again, that's the wide receiver 4, the tight end 2, and the running back 3, so don't worry about it too much. And then the opponent team, so San Francisco, is allowing fantasy points per game total, and we're going to get that number over here off this total, 77.6. So I would look at this and say, okay, this is probably a pretty accurate projection. They're projecting about what San Francisco is allowing. Now, if you come over here to San Francisco, you see a different story. The total projected in the game here is 85.1, but Arizona is giving up 108.5. So what that means is that you can bump these numbers for these guys, and you're probably going to get a little bit more value. And then you can even go over here and say, okay, which ones do I want to bump? Okay, wide receivers green, QB's green, so maybe we're going to take Garoppolo up, and then we're going to take some of these wide receivers and bump them up in our stack. So this is going to be a pretty accurate projection. This one we should have some leeway, and San Francisco should be able to exceed that 85.1. So this is something new I'm adding for 2020 that I'd like to follow. And now as far as sports betting, so a lot of people that play daily fantasy also do a lot of sports betting. So as opposed to 2 years ago, I had 2 different sheets, 2 different tabs. I'm trying to integrate all of them, which I did last year. So you'll see here, this is my custom model that I follow for sports betting. Now, I'm not saying if this says it's going to cover, bet all your money on it. That's not the case. So just read everything on the sheet and make an informed decision. That's the best way to go. So, for example, you'll hear a lot of Vegas sports bettors talk about a YPP line or yard per point line, so I'm going to explain this a little bit. So over here I put the yard per point line. So if you went off straight yard per point, offense, defense, this is what the line would come. And a lot of sports bettors that I've read that do this for a living, they have their own method for calculating this yard per point line, but this is the basic idea of it, and it should be pretty close to the Vegas line. So this here says San Francisco should be -5, and they're open at -8, and it moved to -7. So what this is telling me is that the line at 8 was too high. We have it at -5, and it's already moved down to -7, and this is last year's stats. So this yard per point line looks good for this game because it's pulling this line down, so I like that. Now, our custom model is going to give us a score of roughly 31-21, so by about 10, and this is run off different numbers. So something to look at. So look at Vegas and then kind of make your own decision what you think, and then you can look at the custom model, and then you can also look over here at the yard per point line. These numbers here are little, don't pay attention to them. They're basically used in this YPP calculation, and I got them there just so I can see them and I don't delete them on the sheet. And we'll go over that more in a sports betting video that I'm going to do, but anyways, I wanted to show you what the 2020 NFL cheat sheet looks like and put it out there, so hopefully we can get started. Oh, one more thing I want to show you. Let me find a game. So if it's on the main slate, we are going to have a salary. If it is not on the main slate, like let's say Kansas City, your salary is going to have this ... So I'm only loading salaries for the main slate, but for the primetime games, I will keep the projections in there. So it's still going to have a projection for the players. So you'll just have to, when you're building your lineup, look at the projection versus what their salary is. Just because since there's a Thursday night game, usually a Sunday night game, and a Monday night game, that's 3 extra imports I'd have to do just to get the salaries, and I don't have the time. So I'm leaving the projections up there because I can grab them all at once, but the salaries won't be in there for non-primetime games. And that's the same over here on the main. Let me scroll back over. And they're probably down here at the bottom. Yeah, see, so if your salary is like this, that just means these are non-primetime teams. But anyways, I hope you guys like the sheet. Play with it. Each week I'll probably add a little something to it to make it more fun. And let's go Chiefs.